Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. For those of you who are just joining us here for the first time tonight, I'd like to remind you you can catch Truth on the Tracks here every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on ucy.tv. You can access the show's personal webpage at ucy.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. On that page, you'll find my RSS feed of the links to my more recent articles and posts on BrandonTurbeville.com, and you'll find a chat room if you want to jump in a chat with some like-minded individuals, and you'll also find the archive versions of this show posted on the left-hand side of the page. I want to remind you also that I'm a staff writer for ActivistPost.com. You can catch most of my work as it comes out there in real time. You can also go to the Contributors tab on that page, click on, under Staff Writers, click on my name, and that will take you to the Activist Post Staff Writers page. Also, bear in mind that some of my work comes out, some rare but still, well, I don't want to say rare, but some regular articles also come out at the antimedia.org and progressivegazette.com. If you're interested in following my work specifically, I'd recommend that you would go to BrandonTurbeville.com and check out all that's the website where I repost all of my articles, all of the archive versions of this show, YouTube videos, the interviews that I've done, and all of the relevant information as it stands. So BrandonTurbeville.com. Now, I wanted to bring up a special guest this week. And I went on a fairly decent discussion last week for some time about people who are in the fight. And what I said was that it's easy to sit back and criticize people from your easy chair and tell people how they're doing things wrong and how they could be doing them better. But if you're not in the fight, then you shouldn't be talking at all. And I'm encouraging people to take action and actually get out into the fight in some manner. It's going to take different forms, whatever your activism, whatever you're good at, but regardless, we have to get active. And I wanted to bring up someone who is active and who has, put themselves into the blood and sand of the arena and is actually in the fight. And his name is Adam Rodriguez from Pennsylvania. Adam is running for Congress in the 10th District of Pennsylvania as a Democrat. And his website is adamforpa.com. That's ADAMFORPA.com. You can also find him at Facebook and Twitter, the same handle, Adam for PA, on Facebook and Twitter. So please go like his page, follow him on Twitter, and go visit the website. Interestingly enough, Adam has an economic platform very similar to the things that I talk about on a regular basis here on this show. So we're going to get into some of that, but before we do, I just want to welcome Adam to the show. Adam, welcome to Truth on the Tracks.
Well, thank you very much, Brandon. That was a really nice, very kind introduction, and I really appreciate you letting me come on and giving me a little bit of a platform here where I can talk about some of the issues that are really important to me. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we really get into the discussion about the platform, why don't you tell us a little bit about your campaign, who you are, give us a brief overview of, why you're running and what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. Great. That's perfect. Well, I live in Northeast PA. I'm in the Stroudsburg area, which is about 80 miles east of Scranton. It's the edge of the former coal mining area where they used to mine a lot of anthracite, but now that's been taken over by the shale fracking operation that's going on a lot of these gas companies. But nonetheless, it's a very heavily former mining and steel industrial area. But I'm running in the 10th district for Congress as a Democrat. The 10th district was redistricted back in 2010 when Barletta, who was the 17th district's Republican congressman, he was brought in under a Tea Party wave. And then when they redistricted the 10th to accommodate the 17th, they expanded it. So it goes from northeast PA, where it meets New York and New Jersey. There's like a tri-state area in the corner. Actually, that's where the Delaware watershed region is. And then it goes all the way across nearly halfway across the state to Tioga County, down all the way to the southern regions of the Allegheny Mountains, and then up again over Carbondale and down and across to Monroe County, which is where I'm in. I'm in Stroudsburg, which is in Monroe County. I'm in actually East Stroudsburg. So I really never thought that until recently that I would say that I'm running for Congress, let alone running for Congress as a Democrat. But a good friend of mine, Darcy Richardson, who's a really pretty prolific writer, and he's a fantastic person and a great writer. He encouraged me, or actually threw out the idea of maybe getting involved and running for office and doing it as a Democrat. And because I was getting fed up, really fed up. Actually, it was a situation involving one of the local gas companies who was delivering gas to my house, and they shut off the gas because it was too low, and then they wanted $360 to come turn it back on again. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. The fees were incredible. And so, that kind of prompted me to say, I need to get more involved because we're just being taken advantage of. And a lot of people in my community were saying, you really need to run for office. Forget about this agitating and protesting. You need to take it to the next level. So my friend Darcy suggested, actually, the way he put it to me, said, we haven't an independent has not entered into the Pennsylvania state legislature until going all the way back into the 1930s. So you don't really stand much of a chance. Because initially I was thinking I was going to run for state office, like maybe a state rep's position, or maybe a state senate, or maybe even like a county commissioner, just to start off. So I went down to the Democratic committee meeting, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. I was able to give a full exposition of a lot of my ideas, contributing in different clubs and, different committees they have within the one Monroe County Democratic Committee. And basically, I just said to them, do you have any open or uncontested seats that are happening? I'd like to maybe enter into a race against one of the Republicans, just to make it easy. And they said, because it's mostly Democrat and Republican. There's very minor third party involvement, but at any rate, they said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Actually, in the next district over, the congressional district, we have at this point no one's involved in the primary as a Democrat. Would you like to run? And I was like, okay, but I signed up to be a Democrat, wanting to basically really start to change the party. That's been my main goal. For me it's a great irony that this is the party that basically under Jackson took down the Second National Bank, and since that time we've never had explicitly a national bank, which is one of my platform points. And here I am running as a Democrat, and the founder of the party is this populist. I mean, he was almost like the Tea Party populist of the day, Andrew Jackson. So if anything, I really consider myself a Democrat that wants to get back to the New Deal. I consider myself a New Deal Democrat. I know you've expressed a little bit of concern about FDR, but I'm a big FDR guy. So I've done a lot of research on his policies, and the way he was able to bend the Federal Reserve to his will is very admirable, and I think I want to engage in that process again. And his anti-imperialist standpoint was very strong. He really didn't have a very good relationship with Churchill, contrary to popular belief. They were not friends. And like you said, he was an anti-imperialist, and he was able to do things in terms of, basically, the Tennessee Valley Authority and the entire New Deal program of Reconstruction is what we need today. So that's where I stand right now. I'm in the middle of a ballot process right now. I need to get on the ballot, and I'm circulating my petitions for signatures. I need to get need to get at least 1,000 signatures, valid signatures, to get on the ballot for Congress. There's 15 counties within the district. It's a huge district by area. It's one of the largest districts in the country, and it's the largest district in the entire state. I think it's the third largest in the country. But then again, some states are used, depending on the population, it might just be one or two districts. But at any rate, it's a very, very large district by area, so there's a big area to encompass and travel out to. I've been visiting all the different committees throughout the district, and I plan on going back again and making it a point to getting there getting out to the committees, the Democratic committees, as much as possible, because I've been getting such a good response. It's just unbelievable. So that's the basic broad outlines of my situation right now. I have until the 11th to hand in my petitions, and they have to be all signed and dated and notarized. And after that, there's a week period where they can be contested, and then after that, we enter into the primaries. As long as I have enough signatures, I'll get on the ballot. And there's one other candidate that's running in the district that kind of like came out of nowhere. Right before there was a big Pennsylvania Democratic State Committee meeting down in Hershey, and a couple days before that, he announced that he was going to run. His name is Scott Rione. He's a venture capitalist from the Williamsport area, and he's very involved with the fracking industry. So,
oh, nice.
We're coming from different backgrounds. Yeah, he's running. He has a real estate business, but he's also involved. He's basically a landman, or working with landmen, putting together deals to put groups of people together and negotiate a price for their mineral rights, and then they lease the land out. And I'm sure he's probably involved with something to that effect. So, I don't know really what his platform is. He's got a couple of issues he outlined to me over a phone call once, because we did talk once. We're trying to not make the primary fight too partisan, but I'm sure issues will be brought to the fore during our primary as long as I get there. So that's the lay of the land so far there, Brandon.
All right, very good. And you said you needed 1,000 signatures? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's doable.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. Again, just to remind the listeners to go to adamforpa.com, ADAMFORPA.com, and
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the platform here. This is specific interest to me. Let's start with the first point, the Wall Street sales tax. My listeners are going to be familiar with this. In fact, they probably have PTSD every time they hear the word Wall Street sales tax. The words Wall Street sales tax. So, if you would be so kind as to explain the Wall Street sales tax.
No problem. Well, it's along the lines of what they call the Robin Hood tax, and obviously there was the Tobin tax, which was instituted as a forex exchange tax. This guy Tobin, I'm not familiar with his first name, but he was an economist from, I think, Yale, who to mitigate the problems that he foresaw. Well, he was a Keynesian, first of all, to get that straight. He's not like, an American system. I would consider myself an American system political economist, in that tradition that I'm running in, But even and then that's with FDR, and then also both Lincoln too. But at any rate, so this guy, he was an economist from Yale back in the 1970s, and to kind of like mitigate these wide swings in exchange rates, that you should countries should institute a small tax on foreign exchange trades in order for them to bolster themselves against any kind of like speculative attack on their currencies. And that was proposed in the mid 70s, I think maybe 76. Then it came to New York, and they were actually able to get the law passed in New York. But then the banks went to UCarry and threatened the banks and the Wall Street traders in New York. They basically came to UCarry, was the governor at the time, and threatened to leave. They said they would go across the river over to New Jersey. And if I was UCarry, I would have been like, good riddance. But at any rate, he didn't do that. So they collect the tax to this day in New York State. And it's a pretty small percentage. It's like less than 0.025. It's a pretty minuscule tax. But even at that tax, it garners about $16 billion or more per year at the state level in New York. But then it's given back and remitted back to the banks at the end of each fiscal year, and it's given back to their investors in the form of a credit. So unbelievably, the tax is remitted. It's gathered by the state. It goes into the Treasury and then given back. It's just unbelievable. And just they're always having these discussions about budget shortfalls. Just think about what that would do to alleviate all these problems that they're having in education, budget shortfalls in education, budget shortfalls in all kinds of social programs, people being thrown out of their homes, all kinds of, vocational programs to get people back to work. All these things are being cut, unemployment cut, and meanwhile, the banks are getting away with murder on this in New York State because obviously this is one of the biggest trading centers that you're going to have. So, that token tax is, it is actually something in Europe right now that they're doing, but here in the United States you have the Robin Hood tax, right? And there's actually a couple of congressmen. I think there's this Congressman Keith Ellison who has his Inclusive Prosperity Act, and I think there's a Senator Harkin who put something forward in the Senate. I think Bernie Sanders might have some legislation, but it's not going anywhere. We've been talking about this for too long, and we need to really get something going and enact it. So that's why. One of the reasons why I'm running for office is to get this tax and I'm calling for a 1% sales tax on all stock transfers. So anyone, obviously, I don't know if you've explained it to some of your listeners, but if you're trading for up to $1 million, you're not going to be taxed. If you're trading for anything over than that, you're going to be taxed with a sales tax. And the reason that you do it on a sale is because originally the structured investment or the stock, it's originated by the company, the bank, the corporation that's issuing this bond, this equity, right? So it has to be legalized by the state. In other words, this is really also for the benefit of the person that's buying and selling the stock, because if you buy a stock that doesn't have a stamp affixed to it, or, with these high-speed trades that are going on Wall Street, $4 quadrillion worth of high-speed trades per year. Just think about if you do a 1% sales tax on that. Excuse me. Just think about how much income that would generate for the country, not just at the federal level, but also the state level, because it would be shared between the states. So if you were to sell the stock, you put a stamp on it. And there was actually, even in Pennsylvania, there was a stamp. There was a law from 1906 after the silver markets collapsed all the way up to 1964 for a small stock transaction tax. But that was, obviously after Kennedy was assassinated in this, right-wing turn that took place in this country, started getting worse and worse after that. The bankers were able to get that expunged, and now they don't pay any stock transfer tax at all. And then that's when they introduced the token tax. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So you're going to put the stamp on after it's sold on the transfer after it's sold. So the onus is on the seller to pay the tax. So if you're trading for more than $1 million, you're going to be paying a 1% sales tax on that, because why should they get away with not paying any sales tax on these things that they claim have so much value? Let's call them, let's call their bluff. Let's play the game and say, okay, fine, this is worth so much money. You're going to pay a sales tax on it because you're garnering all this money because of all this high-speed trades that you're doing. Your financial institutions that are engaged in this process are getting away with murder, and you're just gambling. So it's basically a sin tax is what it really is. So you're going to pay the sales tax on that. And I got into a little bit of a debate with a woman the other day saying, well, why should I have to pay a sales tax on she wasn't even trading. She was just, playing devil's advocate. She was a Republican actually, but I was like, well, that's just typical, libertarian, or you would want to say, Tea Party mentality. You don't want to pay any taxes at all. Well, quite frankly, if you're going to engage in an activity like this more than anything, you're going to pay a tax on that because it's totally unproductive. I don't care if you don't want to pay the tax or not. You're going to pay the tax. That's it, plain and simple. If I have to pay tax on non-essential items, EPA doesn't have a tax on clothing and food, but they have a tax on non-essential items like electronics, cars, and sale of properties and things like that. Well, fine. Why should I have to pay a tax on that, and then you don't pay a tax on the stock transfers? You see, but they don't want to pay that. In fact, they just live in this kind of like Friedman-esque, fantasy world, where they don't have to pay any taxes at all, or they're not responsible for any of their activities and how detrimental it could be to the rest of the country. They could care less about that. So I say, no. This is the federal government, and I'm going to be in the federal government, and you're going to be paying that tax. And there's a lot of other people that agree with me and that want that money to be able to do the things we need to do to get back on our feet as part of an overall program. So that's my approach on the sales tax issue, on the Wall Street sales tax.
Yeah, and it's not as if this is some kind of radical new tax. This is entirely constitutional. As you said, it's a sales tax. Some of us pay upwards of 12%.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's completely constitutional. Well, see, sales tax in general, I mean, if you're really going to get down to brass taxes when it comes to sales tax, that for the most part it's something of a regressive tax, because in a properly functioning economy, you want to be able to tax corporations at a proper rate, so you don't have to institute, if not any type of sales tax, no tax at all. You want to have taxes on imports, number one, tariffs, and you want to have taxes at the business level, corporate level, right? And income tax, we lived for a long time in this country without an income tax, but then again, we didn't have the kind of services that we know we need in order for us to be a healthy, productive economy. The widening out of the middle class was as a result of a more progressive taxation structure, which we've completely turned upside down, and it's completely regressive right now. So, I have no problem paying my taxes, as long as I know that I'm going to get the services I know that the nation and myself will benefit from, But overall, sales taxes in general tend to be somewhat regressive, because it's usually the people that can afford to pay it the least that are having to pay it and getting hurt the most, so.
Right, and I pay a 7 to 8% tax on the basic goods that I purchase day in and day out in the area where I live. Right. So 1% is not asking too much. This is not unfair.
It's not. No, not at all. I mean, I come across people who are like, people that are really hardcore, like, man, it should be 6%. I was like, well, look, you got to understand what's going on here. I mean, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater until we can have some of the other things that I'm talking about when it comes to a progressive tax structure or the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, which is another one of my platform points. Until we have that, you need to kind of like milk this for what it's worth until we just get rid of it altogether. I mean, like they're trading in derivatives that were outlawed. for a good, from the 1930s all the way up until, the late 90s with Glass-Steagall and then the Commodities Futures Trading Act, So, these things were completely outlawed under the Banking Act of the 1930s, and and now they're getting away with murder, and it's just it just reminds me so much of like the John Law bubble and that whole period in England was just totally wild, crazy speculation, and to have that here in this country, it's shameful and it saddens me. But we'll get through it. I'm confident that we will get through it.
Well, hopefully these ideas like the 1% Wall Street sales tax will take hold, and we definitely can get through it if they do. We've only got about 2 more minutes before the break, but just why don't you mention the nationalization of the Federal Reserve for the next minute or so, and we'll carry this on the other side, and tell us what you mean by the nationalization of the Fed.
Yeah, this is important, and this is a very important concept for people to grasp because it really embodies the very essence of what it means for a country to be sovereign. If a country is not able to control its own currency, to control its own economics, to be able to decide where they're going to put money and effort in order to be able to, build for the future, because it's the future that determines the present. If the country can't do that, then you're basically beholden to a private cartel of bankers, which is what's happening right now. So, that's the basic gist of the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, and we can talk about how that would be implemented, and the history of it really is what's really important for us to be able to understand.
Yeah, and this goes against some of the more well-meaning and popular slogans like "in the Fed," which is it's right. Very euphonious, and it is well-meaning, and it's quite
right.
Popular, but unfortunately, just ending the Fed is not going to do it. In fact, that's not going to do really any favors for the American people. We've got to take control of the national bank, but we'll take that on the other side. We're about to go to break right now, ladies and gentlemen. My guest is Adam Rodriguez, who's running for Congress on the 10th District of Pennsylvania. His website is adamforpa.com, ADAMFORPA.com. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter under the same handle, Adam for PA. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about the nationalization of the Federal Reserve on the other side, ladies and gentlemen.
They told us to pack up our bags and head south. They said that the luck of the Irish ran out. They told us they burned down our farms and our stores. They cursed us for cowards
What are they really after? Connect these 7 dots. Number 1, they're against extending unemployment benefits to people who have been out of work for more than 6 months, even though there's still only 1 job for every 3 unemployed. Number 2, they don't want to raise the minimum wage, even though today's federal minimum is 25% below what it was in 1968, adjusted for inflation. Number 3, they're against extending Medicaid benefits to millions of low-wage workers. Number 4, they want to cut food stamps. Number 5, they refuse to invest in education or job training. Number 6, they don't want to rebuild America's crumbling infrastructure or have any other jobs program. And number 7, they're out to bust unions. You see a pattern here? You're waging a war against the poor and the working class in order to keep people down. Because when you're unemployed, without any support, without any bargaining power, you have to feed your family. You're desperate. And when you're desperate, you'll take whatever they are willing to pay you, even if it's next to nothing. And you won't dare make a fuss. You won't complain about unsafe work conditions or toxic chemicals leaking out of storage tanks or anything else. You won't run the risk of trying to form a union. You won't get involved in politics. You won't make a ruckus or rock the boat in any way. You'll take whatever they choose to give you because you are sinking. Make no mistake, this war against the poor and working class is designed to make sure Americans who've been losing ground for 30 years don't dare do anything about it. Without extended unemployment benefits, a declining real minimum wage, no Medicaid, no food stamps, no education, job training, or jobs program, and no union, you'll do exactly as they tell you, and that's fine with them. But it's bad for America. As a first step to stopping this war on the poor and working class, call your senator and demand the Senate pass extended emergency unemployment benefits. As a second step, watch Inequality for All and get the big picture.
While much of the nation, as we've been reporting, is struggling with a wet and freezing winter, the Southwest is experiencing record heat. And for weeks, California has been suffering from a serious drought. As you can see on this map, more than 90% of the state is experiencing a severe to exceptional shortage of water. The areas shaded in red and maroon are the most extremely parched areas of the state. President Obama is visiting California today, where he's meeting with farmers in the Central Valley as part of his trip. He's directing more than $160 million in federal aid, much of it going to provide relief for those farmers and ranchers with livestock losses. Special correspondent Spencer Michaels has been spending time with farmers and others who are feeling the effects. Here's his report.
Dairyman Don DiBernardi has had a rough winter. The 700 cows he milks at his organic dairy in Sonoma County, California, are eating costly hay, not the lush green grass they usually munch on this time of year. The 14-month drought has kept it brown until just now. That could put his organic certification in jeopardy. He's had to truck water in to clean his milking barn. His springs are dry.
As far as pasture, we're not going to have any feed for at least 2 months.
And what's the result of that?
Well, we have to truck hay in where there's not much hay left in the state.
So what are you going to do?
Well, we come out of state. Well, we have to try and get hay somewhere.
Each of his cows drinks 35 to 40 gallons of water a day. Like a lot of dairymen, he's considering selling some of them for beef, since it's too expensive to feed them.
We'll have to wait and see if the pasture comes or how the hay supply holds out. We probably will sell some. You can't afford to feed an animal all year and buy hay to feed it.
The problem, says DiBernardi, is too many people and not enough stored water.
More people come into California that build more homes, but they do not build any infrastructures for dams for water supply.
50 miles north of the cattle ranch in the wine country of Sonoma County, grape growers whose vines are dormant right now have been told by water officials in meetings like this one that the drought could be of biblical proportions. They use water in the winter to protect the grapes from frost and in the summer to irrigate them. Without enough, the crop gets smaller and the vines are vulnerable to freezing.
The early February storms in Northern California got everyone excited until they realized that what seemed to be a monumental storm was really just a drop in the bucket. Water officials say the state would need 6 or 7 more such storms to end this drought, and that is very unlikely.
With the so-called rainy season half over, the state remains in bad shape. Reservoirs are far below capacity, and rivers are trickling like it was the summer. The state's huge agricultural production is in jeopardy in the Central Valley as groundwater is becoming scarce.
For more news, visit youtube.com/pigmine5.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. My guest tonight is Adam Rodriguez, who is running for Congress as a Democrat in the 10th District of Pennsylvania. His website is adamforpa.com. That's Adam, FORPA.com. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter, so please follow him there and like his page. I mentioned before, in the first segment that his economic platform is very similar to the issues that I've discussed here on this show, such as the Wall Street sales tax, the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, and a couple of other things that we're going to talk about hopefully if we have time. But before the break, we were talking about the nationalization of the Federal Reserve, and I wanted to give Adam the opportunity to sort of flesh this out a little more and tell us what he means by the nationalization of the Fed and how that would benefit us.
Yeah, well, just to kind of touch on something I was thinking about. There was a couple of weeks ago, there was this congressman from New Jersey. He's from northern Jersey. He came out with a bill. I'm trying to remember the guy. I think it might be Scott Garrett. Now, this guy's an interesting character because he came out with a bill about 4 years ago where he wanted to basically, under the elastic clause, he wanted them to say in the Constitution, every time you wanted to be able to make an appropriation, you had to show where in the Constitution under the general welfare where it would be applicable in order for them to, institute a program, say, for entitlements, whatever it is, what is these Wall Street marketing terms they come up with, right? So they were basically making encroachments against the Constitution, against the general welfare in the Constitution, right? Now, this guy's a real character. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, he comes out, he's introducing another bill. I don't know if he's had a co-sponsor, where he wants to make sure that the Federal Reserve comes under the control of the Congress. Now, I didn't really look at the legislation, but knowing where this congressman comes from, this is very suspicious to me, and it looks as though this is along the lines of the Fed thing, where they want to be able to completely restrict the Federal Reserve not to do this bailout process and all that. I mean, I don't like it either, but it is preventing another collapse. But they are starting to mitigate and draw back on the quantitative easing. So, but I don't like that at all. I think it's all these banks should have been through bankruptcy. But I just found it interesting where he was coming out with this legislation, because what he wants to do is to not let them do what I want to do, which is make it into a credit facility. In other words, take the Federal Reserve, get rid of these behaviorists, economists, these Keynesians, whatever they want to call themselves. I really quite frankly don't know. This hodgepodge of free traders, just get rid of all of them, change the management structure, keep the essence of the bank in terms of its ability to be able to distribute credit, but credit for the people, not for the banks. That's the key. In other words, rather than just engaging in quantitative easing, why can't they open up one of the discount windows so that we can engage in building this maglev rail system across the United States that we've been talking about for so long? Just think how many jobs that would create right then and there. All the people that would have to be trained, all the research that would have to be done to make sure that it was done properly. And there's a plethora of other programs that are on the books, shovel ready, whatever. They're out there, and we know what they are. Why can't we again force the Federal Reserve, this as FDR did, to basically bend to the will of the people? And it says right in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 says that the only branch of government which can coin and denote the value of money is Congress. So they're being stripped of that responsibility. They're being stripped of that right. So basically, the people are being stripped of that right, and this private cartel of bankers who have proven to be an incompetent bunch of boobs, as far as I'm concerned. There might be some good ones in there. I really don't know. But you know what? As a collective group, they're privately elected. They're not elected by the people, so it's not a national bank. People always want to confuse the idea of, Hamilton instituted the first Federal Reserve because the first and second national bank was the Federal Reserve. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. They were elected. They were actually appointed by Congress, and they were responsible to Congress during the first and second national banks. So, Andrew Jackson took down the Second National Bank. So now with this Federal Reserve System, they're not accountable to the people at all. Ben Bernanke was brought in front of Congress a few years ago to testify where all that money for that $28 trillion bailout, where all that money went. He said, I don't have to do that. He said I don't do that in front of a congressional hearing. And I think it was the House Ways and Means Committee. He came in front of them and said, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to tell you. So that just goes to show you how lawless this operation is. And actually, I was looking at one of their charters. It's under Regulation 13.3, Federal Reserve. It basically says that they can lend money to any institution that they deem fit to do. Well, if that's the case, well, then you can open up one of your little discount windows for the people and do it post-haste, Ben, or now this new one is Janet Yellen. And she's the one that came up with the whole quantitative easing nonsense. She dreamt that stuff up. She's the one that cooked it up. I don't know what she cooked it up in, but she should get rid of that pot as far as I'm concerned, because that's a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, really. I mean, I don't know where the heck these people come off. They have these very haughty looks, you know. They prance around, Congress. They prance around Washington, D.C. as though they think they know something. They don't know anything. They're a bunch of incompetents. Get rid of all of them, especially those two. And I don't know. She should dye her hair. It's too white. She doesn't look good at all. I don't know. It looks ugly in those pictures. I don't like her any more than I like Ben. I didn't like Ben's beard either. That looked ridiculous with that bald head. It looked stupid. And Greenspan's a whole separate issue altogether. With those glasses, are ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. He was another incompetent boob. So just get rid of all those clowns. And also inside the Federal Reserve, I don't know if people know it, there's these murals and paintings of all, like, these free trade economists that we're supposed to just fawn over, like Adam Smith, right? All these free trade idiots that the British are constantly pumping, pushing on us. David Hume, the Ricardos, or the Ricardos. I'm going to go in there with a big roller and just roll over all of them. I'll do it all myself. In fact, I'll be the first one to volunteer for that committee to just roll over all those paintings. And then we'll put some better pictures up of better economists, people like Henry Carey, right? All the economists that have been airbrushed very carefully by the Federal Reserve and the Washington Post and all of these, basically corporatist newspapers out there, right, that are shilling for these corporations in Wall Street. Well, they've been very carefully airbrushed out. Henry Carey, you have Henry Clay, Hamilton himself. He was an economist, very good. He wrote the articles of report on manufacturers. Right? When you read those things, it becomes very clear that it's very different from free trade. So, you can have industry. We promote industry, but it needs to be regulated. You see. So all that stuff just needs to be very quickly dispensed with, as far as I'm concerned. Very handily, because it can be disproven that this is just a fraud. Free trade in and of itself is a fraud to the American people. It's poison to us and it's foreign. So people have to get that through their head that this is really just another trick from an imperium known as Britain to get the American people hooked on this nonsense, so they continually go through this process of destruction and creative destruction. The stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. Just brush all that stuff aside. You can have a stock market, that's fine, but we're not going to bail you out. We're not going to tie your entire system to the real economy. The American system of political economy does not engage in or look towards Wall Street as the great pains of industry that we have to go to them on bended knee for money. That's not the way. That's not the way our federal government. It's very unbecoming to a federal government, actually. So.
Yeah, it is, and these systems that we have now, as they are played out, they've proven their worth time and time again with their miserable failures, whether it's free trade or
exactly.
the other things you've mentioned.
That's the whole point. One failure after another. The Federal Reserve was instituted, and what they said to us, right, when they rammed it through Congress, like that was illegal on Christmas Eve, right? And then it was the Rockefeller. One of the Rockefeller, I think one of the nephews or a son-in-law from Rhode Island that rammed it through on New Year's Eve. That that was illegal the way they did that. And then what they said was, oh, this will prevent all collapses from now until eternity. You won't have to worry about financial collapses anymore. Well, less than 20 years later, it collapsed miserably. It's a fraud. The whole thing is a joke. These people don't even know what they're talking about. They need to go back to school. They need to redo school all over again. Go back to kindergarten to start all over again. Let's see how you do. Let's see if you can figure it out this time. You know?
But leave America's finances alone, please. They've done enough.
Please, exactly. Stay away. Just stay away from the banks. No, we'll give you some Monopoly money you can play with. How's that? Will you be happy with that? Oh, God, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable how far we've been led down the primrose path with these idiots. It's just amazing, you know? That's okay. But their time is coming. Their time is almost over, and I fully plan on being able to oversee it, you know?
Well, that's what we have to do. We have to be prepared to do that, and we have to be prepared to move forward in that regard, which is what you're doing by putting your name in the hat for election there in the 10th District of Pennsylvania. Again, reminding people, adamforpa.com is the website. Adam, ADAM, 4FORPA.com. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter as well. I want to move on to just one of the other planks of the platform here. The $15 minimum wage. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your platform position on that?
Sure. Well, you know, actually, it's funny. Today I had a friend who has a small business, and he was looking at my website for the first time, and he said, $15 an hour minimum wage. I can't pay that. I said, I said, he goes, maybe 12. And I said, all right, well, first of all, when you're negotiating with people, you should know, because he's a very good negotiator, actually. You always want to come in a little higher. You know, I mean, come on, really. That's just the ABCs of negotiation. But beyond that, you know, I've spoken to people in organizations known as NORM, the National Organization for Raw Materials, right? They use a very scientifically designed mathematical equation to figure out when a product hits or a commodity at the point of its manufacture or the point that it's harvested, say grain, okay? At the point that it's harvested is the point that it becomes monetized. That using that calculation based upon parity levels, that and that there's a relationship between that point, the point that a grain becomes commoditized, to the point that, you know, there's a direct relationship to that and labor and what labor's value is in terms of a minimum wage, okay? That there's a direct relationship. And then what they said was that based upon parity levels at its peak, and parity kind of peaked in 1949, so if you know anything about parity in the agriculture business, and this is the same for any raw material that could be considered a vital commodity, the oil or, you know, different types of ores or, you know, corn, okay, for that matter. So based upon 1949 parity levels, the real minimum wage right now, adjusted for inflation, should be $18 and I think 35 cents. $18.35. Now, you look at that and you say, these workers down in Kentucky that were, you know, trying to form a union with this Volkswagen plant, they came away saying, well, we're happy with $19.50 an hour. I mean, what if we trained our workers to be when they're happy, basically making, when you factor in inflation, and then also it ties, you know, the minimum wage ties back to commodity prices, right, at parity levels, which is what it should be, right? They're making less than $1 over minimum wage, technically speaking, and they're happy with that. See, that to me, that does not show a fighting spirit, regardless of the United Auto Workers and, you know, all their problems or their inability to be able to organize people or whatever. It's the structure that was important, and they denied the structure of having a union be able to negotiate a fair price, right, for their labor. And then on top of that, they're happy with 19 and change per hour, which is the average median income for a lot of their workers. And the irony is that Volkswagen probably would have accepted maybe higher terms, and they just walked away. So it really was a disaster for labor. But at any rate, the minimum wage issue, yeah, it needs to be $15 an hour, and you would stagger it. You would do, say, over, say, a 2 to 3 year period, maybe a little bit longer if you do full 15. You stagger it, so now it's $7 and a quarter, which is really ridiculous. A lot of companies pay more, I would think, than that. But anyways, that's bare minimum. That's like slave labor, really. And you would graduate it up, maybe $1.50 or maybe $2 per year until you get to that point, right? Because then people would see the efficacy of it, right? You're putting money back into the hands of the people that need to be able to buy the necessities of life. They need to be able to buy clothes. They need to be able to buy a car. All those, what they call products that have a high resale value. I forget what they call it. There's a certain name on Wall Street for different types of like washing machines and things like that. They'll be buying those things, and the economy will benefit from it. Now, obviously, the ones that are going to be hurt are the small business owners. So that's why you really have to be careful in how you're going to stagger this thing if you're going to do it, because you can't just do it overnight. That'll kill a lot of small business owners that are out there. A lot of them might not be engaging in something that's, a lot of it's just very service-sector. But regardless, you have to do what you can do to benefit the most people at one time. So the other thing to factor in here is that you're subsidizing these big corporations by basically paying higher taxes or more taxes to be able to put into the different programs that these people have to avail themselves to because they're not being paid enough. So basically, it's another example of corporate welfare. Forget about, subsidies. Forget about corporate loopholes. Forget about all the different ways that at the personal income level, all these CEOs skirt the law and don't pay their fair share of taxes, right? So then on top of that, they're not paying their workers properly, and the regular average taxpayer is having to subsidize these corporations. And actually, a Republican came out in California. Actually, this is interesting, making that same argument for the minimum wage, but obviously he's saying it should be 10 and change. Just brush that off the table. It's an insult. I've talked to so many people in the industry that in different fields that work at that minimum wage level or even a little bit higher, and it's not enough. It's just not enough. People can't survive on that. They can't save any money to put their kids through school. It's not half the time. It's not even their fault that they're in the situation that they're in. Maybe they couldn't get a proper education. Who knows? Education is so costly and so expensive these days. Who knows what the reason is? But you're creating a permanent underclass of impoverished people, where they're saying 50 million people are at that level. It's much more than that. It's much more than that, because when they say 50 million people, they're not factoring in inflation. They're not factoring in all the other added costs. So it's really a lot more people in the lower end of the middle class that are suffering, and people in the middle class period are suffering. So we need to get that minimum wage up, and it's going to affect wages in the upper, people that are in the middle class making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year and just getting by. It's going to make things better for them because they're going to be making a higher wage too. It's going to raise the floor. It's going to raise the platform so that it needs to be more evened out.
Right. Now, just to take an abrupt turn, Adam, we've only got a few minutes left. I want to mention the last two planks of your platform here, the moratorium on fracking and stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Can you give us those in a nutshell? Got a couple minutes.
Well, the TPP thing is obviously horrendous. I was just having a discussion with a good friend about that, and honestly, I'm looking at this more and more, and I think this is the poison pill that was purposely thrown in Obama's lap. I know he's pushing it. I know that he's for the fast track. You have a lot of Democrats that are upset about this. It seems tailor-made to basically work against Obama. And I don't think it's any coincidence that, again, WikiLeaks is kind of like a limited hangout, is putting this out there so that it becomes kind of like, a fait accompli. It's just so bad that no one's going to go for it. It's just another abrogation of the rights of the average American worker. And the other thing is, in TPP, if you can believe this, it's just so horrendous, this whole bill. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is like 12 different countries engaged in the Pacific Rim area that will be engaging in this. One of the things that they're saying, ironically, well, not ironically, is that they're not going to allow for any sales taxes on stock transfers. I was looking at it the other day. I was like, there you go.
Isn't that
That's
convenient?
right there. That's one. Isn't that convenient? Exactly. And they've been supposedly these 400 or 600 corporations have been honing this over for the past, 4 years or whatever. Okay, fine. You can do it. You can write any legislation you want. But if it's coming across my desk, I'm like I said, I'm going to use it as toilet paper as far as TPP. It's short for really good toilet paper. I don't know, man. Maybe it'll come up with a good acronym. That's all it is for me. I'm not going to use it for anything less than that. I'm not even going to consider it. Just throw it right away. Boom, there you go.
It's a toilet paper product.
There's your 4 years of work. It's just toilet paper. Exactly. And the other thing is the fracking issue. Okay, this is just utterly ridiculous. Another thing I found out today on the fracking thing is apparently underneath the Marcellus Shale region, which is this huge natural gas fracking operation that's going on. Underneath that, 12,000 feet below the surface, so roughly a mile and a half beneath the surface of the earth, there's a gigantic oil reserve. Okay, so they're getting away with murder by for this fracking process. When they're done with that, then they want to further exploit this area by extracting out all the oil too. And let's see, if oil prices come down because we're supposed to be energy independent now. Oh, energy independent? You seem to be pretty dependent on charging me $3.50, $4 for a gallon of gas. Okay, and I know where most of that's going. That's going to speculation. So, it's just a total joke, and it's poisoning people's water wells. It's bad. It's a backwards technology. I don't like it at all. And I'm coming out with a moratorium on fracking. And at a bare minimum, they should be paying their employees. They should be hiring unionized employees to do the job, paying them a better fair wage, not making them work 12-hour shifts for 2 weeks straight, back on and off. I mean, the conditions are they're not right. They're not right at all. And not only that, there should also be a severance tax. A severance tax, not an impact tax. They want $50,000 per drill pad. No, you do a 4.5 or a 5% severance tax. That would augment and along the lines of the 1% sales tax. That would augment any shortfalls in the budget in the state of Pennsylvania and throughout the entire country. So Pennsylvania is ground zero for a lot of things this coming year. You're going to see. It's going to get crazy, and if I get into the race in Congress, it's going to be even crazier. So.
Well, tell us what can people do to get involved, and what can they do to help you, and how can they do it? You just got a minute and a half left.
Great. Yeah, great. Well, again, my website. You can go to my website. If you'd like to give a donation, you can go there. That would help out a lot because I want to do this full time. I'm still having to work right now. So, if I can get some more donations coming in, I'll be able to basically go out there every day and do this full time, which would be fantastic, and then be able to expand my campaign out with ads and things like that. And the other thing is, if you're in the Pennsylvania area, call me at 570-807-9729. If you live in the 10th District and you want to help me go out and get signatures, as long as you're a registered Democrat in the 10th District of Pennsylvania, you can help me come out and circulate my petition and help me get on the ballot. Just give me a call on that number I just gave out, 570-807-9729, or go to my website and email me, and we'll work things out.
When is the primary? When is the actual election?
That's going to be the 20th of May. February. Yeah, 20th of May. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, go to adamforpa.com. Again, that's adamforpa.com. Find him on Facebook and Twitter. Like the page. Follow him there on Twitter.